Good morning, guys. Able to see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So yesterday we discussed how many ways to create the servlet application, right? By using servlet interface and generic servlet and HTTP servlet. After that, we discussed what is the difference between all those things. Why we are introduced even servlet interface is available. Then how you are using generic servlet and HTTP servlet, right? So after that, after these examples, I need to explain one more thing, servlet life cycle. Okay. So in servlet life cycle, the servlet life cycle. So when you work with servlets, right? So the corresponding, mm, yeah, one second.
Hello, sir. You are in mute, sir.
Sorry. Yeah. So what I'm telling, right? In the Sarlet life, what is the next concept? Sarlet life cycle. So in the Sarlet life cycle, uh, so this is the your URL. See, this is HTTP Sarlet example, right? When you hit this URL multiple times, each and every time the corresponding my HTTP Sarlet class will execute. Why? Because this servlet class, it will mapped with the corresponding URL. What is the URL? Slash HTTP, right? So each and every time container will perform servlet loading. Each and every request, the corresponding servlet class will load and instantiate, and initializing the corresponding first request. Container will bring the again second time. If you are hitting multiple times, each and every time, the steps will be repeatedly, and the corresponding servlet execution, loading and initialization, everything is for the same flow. Okay. So for example, if you send multiple number of requests to the particular servlet, then container will perform the particular actions. Each and every request, it will do some actions. What are those actions? Each and every time, the corresponding container, servlet container, it will read the web.xml file. Once it will read the web.xml file, if the web.xml contains servlet information, what servlet information, what is the class, what is the servlet name, what is the URL pattern, these things is container will read those things, and it will find the corresponding class. Okay. So finally, it will execute this servlet, and finally it will prepare the response, and it will send it to the browser. This entire thing will do the servlet container. Okay. So so in the next one, what is the difference between like a get and post, right? So when you work with the servlets, there are different types of two methods is there: do get and do post. Okay, going forward I will show you the examples. So do get, nothing but do get method we can use for the only get request. Okay. Post method will do the only post request. Like, post request is containing body, but get method will not having any body. Means the corresponding request containing JSON body. The get request to don't have any URL direct, any body, it contains only URL. This is get request, not post request. Okay. How we can frame post request, going forward I will explain. So next one, welcome files. So when you creating the application, right, in the web.xml, by default you have a welcome file list. So welcome file list, see, what is the purpose of welcome file list? Welcome file list containing welcome files. What is the purpose of welcome file? For example, if you run this example, okay, if you run these examples, if you run HTTP servlet, here you can mention index.html. Okay, so you created index.xml in the web app. So when you deploy a server this application, automatically when you application start, the corresponding index.html it will be automatically open in the browser. That is, if you have any requirement like that, you have to mention your html page. For example, if you run any application, first I need to open this UI page, then by using servlets you need to use welcome file list tag. In the welcome file list tag you have to mention welcome file, and you have to give your html page or html page or jsp page, whatever you need to mention here. Automatically once application is deployed and started, then automatically it will this web page it will displayed in the browser. Going forward I will show you that one. Okay, so now next point. Any doubts up to now? Any doubts? Okay, so next one more concept. There are two concepts is there. One is servlet config and servlet context, right? So servlet config is a object. It will store all the configuration details particular servlet. Okay, so servlet config is available for each and every servlet. For example, in your application, my HTTP servlet is there, and one more login servlet is there, registration servlet is there, and product servlet is there. How many servlets is available? For each servlet, you have a one servlet config object. Okay, so what is the purpose of servlet config? So in the servlet scenarios, if you want to store any all configuration details in the servlet, you can go use the servlet config object. So you have to create servlet config object, and you can store all the required configuration details into particular object, then it is called servlet config object. Okay, so what type of configuration details? What is the configuration details, right? For example, let's say, uh, for example, if you are creating servlet config object, then where the configuration details, it will include local, like a servlet having some logical names. I will show you example. So logical name of the servlet or initialization parameters, and reference of the servlet context. These information is stored into the servlet config. Practically I will show you. Okay, now next one. What is servlet config is an object, right? So it will provide some complete view of particular servlet. So for example, if you use config object, right, config object is containing all the particular information of servlet. That is second point. Okay, when compared to web application, container will prepare the servlet object, each and every servlet. For example, let's say this is one of the web application. So for servlet, it will have my HTTP servlet containing one servlet config object. Okay, so at the time of web application execution, right, container will prepare servlet config object immediately after servlet instantiation means object creation, and just before calling init method in the servlet initialization. So you can understand this point, uh, what I'm telling. When it will create the servlet config object, so in the web application, if you want, your container will prepare servlet config object at the time of after servlet instantiation and before calling init method in servlet initialization means it is invoking the servlet, nothing but it is activating the servlet. What is the instantiation? It will create the object for the particular servlet. So how you can initialize the servlet object? By using init method. Okay, how, what is the instantiation? So container will create the instantiation for the servlet. So in between these two steps, servlet config object will be created. Container will destroy the servlet config object just before servlet deinstantiation. Servlet deinstantiation means, so when you run this application, when you, let's assume, if you are running this application, okay, so you are hitting this URL, you are able to get this response, right? Then immediately you are stopping the server, then automatically destroy method will be execute. So when it will servlet config will be destroy, so the corresponding before servlet destroy, for example, if you stop the server, right, automatically servlet will be destroyed. Before that, servlet config object will be destroyed. That is the servlet config when it will be the servlet config destroy. So these are all the steps to perform, right, to perform servlet config following operation. It will containing all those details. So now we'll jump into the example. Any doubts? If you have any doubts, let me know. Again, I will explain. Yeah, yeah. Any doubts, guys? Any doubts?
No, sir, continue.
Okay. So now this is, let's assume this is my config. This is my, I created one config app. Okay, so let's say content. See here, web.xml. So I created this application. So let's say, see here, my servlet. See, do one thing. So I imported somewhere, right? Otherwise, in front of you, I will create simple example. Uh, what is new? Other config app one next generating web.xml deployment descriptor finish. So here just I'm now this is my structure. I have mentioned web.welcome file list. I am removing this thing. I don't want this now. So I'm going to previous example web.xml. So I will explain these things. Okay. What is the okay, now done. So again, I need my servlet com dot, okay, com dot servlet dot impl, enter. So what is my servlet name? Just I'm taking my config containing HTTP servlet. And I'm going to this method. Currently, I'm using doGet method. Control C. Okay. Now I'm going my class. I'm paste. See. Now I'm deleting this from here. See. Now let's say we need to import these classes. See here. No, 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 no. Something is early. Hmm. Just a second. Uh, Dynamic web project. Go to this location, config. I don't want here. Directly, I will create here. New dynamic project. Yeah. Config app. Okay. Now, next, next, deployment, finish. So your web.xml done. Okay. Okay. Now you have to take it my servlet, right? We have to create. What is the problem here? Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm creating my package. Some slowness is that com dot servlet hyphen impl. Okay, so class is my config servlet. HTTP servlet, and I'm copying my code. Okay, now copy paste it. Okay, Control Shift O. What is the shortcut to imports? Control Shift O. Then automatically whatever class is unimported, automatically it will import. See here, what is the structure for config example, right? I created simple exam project. Okay, here I am web.xml. So servlet tag. This is my servlet tag, and servlet tag my servlet name is uh, my config servlet. Okay, my config servlet. Okay, now in the servlet class, what is my package fully qualified name? It should be impl dot. What is the class? My config servlet. Okay, see here, these tags are common. This is my servlet name and this is my class name, servlet class name. So here I taken init param tag. Init param tag contain two parameters: param name driver, param value sun.jdbc, some jdbc driver name I taken. This is one init parameter. So again, init parameter means initialization parameters, and init parameter again I'm taking url and the corresponding value, and again I'm taking user and password. So servlet mapping tag contains servlet name and servlet url pattern. So here, so in the servlet side, how you can get this details? Go to your servlet class. First of all, the corresponding, I'm setting the content html slash, and I'm creating print writer object response.getWriter. I'm creating servlet. This is the actual implementation of servlet config. How you can create the servlet config class? Servlet config equal to get servlet config. So this method, it will return the servlet config object. So here, string logical name equal to config.get servlet name. By default it will give your servlet name. Okay, now see here, string driver in the web.xml, what is your driver name? See, this is the key. Go to here, string driver equal to config.get init parameter. From web.xml, how you can get this value? So you need to parameter driver. What is the driver? You need to get this value, right? This is the key. So you need to pass the driver is the key, and you will get the driver value. This value you will get. Okay. So I will print. See again, URL. URL you are getting. Username you are getting. Password is getting. How you can? You need to create the config object. Config dot get init parameter. You need to call this method, and you can pass the keys. Okay, so now once you are getting all those things, so you are displaying the content into the browser. So from the out from I yesterday I told you in the system.out.println how you can display content in the console. In the same way, we have to mention in the browser, you need to create the print to writer object. Print to write, instead of system.out.println, you have to call out.println html body h1. This is html format. Okay, logical name, driver, url, username, password. Okay, simply I'm running this application. Let's say how you are getting. See, just a second. I am after the first I will run manually. Sorry, application wise. After that, I will show you debugging how you are getting the values. See what is the URL config. Enter. See what is the logical name. My config servlet. This should be a servlet tag name. And a driver, what is the value in the web.xml? You have these values, right? This is the key and this is the value. This is the key and this is the value. This is the key and this is the value. So how you are getting, I will show you now. I will stop the server. Okay. Right click again, debug. You need to put the content debug point here. Okay. Now how to run the debug mode? Debug as run on server. Select, finish. Yeah. Now I'm hitting the service config. See execution come to where you are putting the debug point, right? Where you are putting the debug point, it will come to the corresponding line. See here, line number 14, right? We have to go one by one, next line by line. We have to hit this URL, say link http over F6 again. See, this is the out object. See, print writer object created. Next, what is the value? Logical name. See, config.gets or config object is created or not. See, config object created. This is the object reference. Okay. Now again, next debug point. See what is the logical name? My config servlet. Where you are getting from web.xml. In immediately when you deploy the application, run one you once you can hit the URL, the corresponding servlet container, it will read the web.xml and it will get the what logic you are written. Based on that one, it will execute. Now again, I am hitting next debug now. Next line. See driver. What is the driver? John Sun JDBC. This is the driver you mentioned in the web.xml. Same way, you will rest of the things it will execute and just click on F8. Go to console. You are able to see all those. This is nothing but configuration details. If you want anything, you can put it in the web.xml. You can get the from servlet. This is the use of servlet config object. Servlet config object is available for each and every servlet, not web application. Each application, it should be each servlet. Any doubts, guys? Any doubts? If you don't have any doubts, I will go to next example. So the corresponding, what is next one? The corresponding, uh, let's say next one is servlet context, right? So what is servlet context? I already told you what is the what is the servlet context. Servlet context is a object. The each and every web application servlet context is available. Okay, that is the fundamental rule. Rule. So servlet context object, it will be available for each and every web application. Okay. So next, Next, so what is servlet context? The corresponding servlet context should be available for each and every web application. Servlet context is an object. It will manage all the context details for particular web application. Okay, where the context details means it will should be a logical name of web application and context parameters. So here init parameters in the servlet config of the scenario, you have init parameters. It should be a servlet level information, but servlet context is a application level information you have in the servlet context object. That is the main difference between servlet config and servlet context. So servlet context object will be prepared by the container. Servlet config object is prepared by the servlet. Okay. So when it will create the servlet context object, the container when the moment of when the start the server, right? For example, you are deployed in the server, you start the server, then automatically servlet object, servlet context object, it will be at the time of application deployment. It will create the servlet context object. So that is the main thing. What is the differences between servlet config and servlet context? Servlet config and servlet context are the both the objects. So servlet config is available on the for each servlet, but servlet context object is available for each application. Servlet context object is containing application level context information along with logical name, but servlet config object is containing config information particular servlet and logical details. Okay, so and one more thing, servlet context will be prepared by the container immediately after servlet instantiation and before the servlet initialization, but servlet context object it will prepared by the at the time of start the server, it is nothing but deployment of the application. Okay, so now we will see the example what is servlet context app. So I will run this one, run a server. I need to manually, I will change my server. Okay, go to window, show view, server. Okay, so now first I will check the corresponding server is running properly or not. So I need to cancel and double click port number. Yeah, application running success. Sorry, server is running successfully. Now what I will do, I will deploy the application. Run on server. Um, Actually, this is I'm using previously 10 server. I need to change this one 9. Finish and apply close. Now I will run this example. What I have to do? Control Shift O. Yeah, and main. Yeah. Now I'm running. See what is the context I created same previously how I created the project, right? Dynamic web project and everything is common. So now in the web.xml, ignore this thing. Okay. See here I'm taken context param. Name is the attribute and value, and context parent designation and value, and the corresponding servlet information. So servlet information, the corresponding servlet name, and servlet mapping contains servlet name and URL pattern. So here it is containing, this is the actual context information. How you are getting these details from the servlet web.xml, how you can read these values, right? That is next step. So in web.xml, you are mentioned your context params. So in the servlets, how you can read these details? Go to your servlet class. Okay, here see, I am taking do get method. Do get method is taking request and response. Okay, see these things and are common. Response, entity, content type, creating the print writer object. So finally, you are creating servlet context equal to get servlet config dot get servlet context. This is the syntax for creating the servlet context object. Get servlet config dot get servlet context. Okay, so this method it will give the servlet context object. So finally string logical name equal to context dot get servlet context name, it will give the application name, your servlet name. String name equal to, go to web.xml, what is the key? Name, right? String name equal to context dot get init parameter, passing the key. In the same way, string designation context dot get init parameter, passing the key. Then automatically you are getting these values. Okay, param value, param name is the key, param value is the value. Go to here. So this should be list, right? So enumeration equal to context dot get init parameter names. So context dot z. So I'm creating this. So these are all the web.xml web.xml file. You are reading these details. After that, context dot get init parameter names. So I'm putting some extra fields. Context dot set attribute. A means dance, and set attribute B means fight, and C means Bangalore. See here, these attributes I mentioned in the context object. Let's assume here context out.println, I'm printing logical name and designation. These three fields I am displaying in the browser. Apart from that, again here I created one enumeration object. This is, let's assume, list. This enumeration object containing multiple values. So how you can iterate? By using while loop e dot has more elements. This is enumeration object, right? You have to iterate by using has more elements. E dot has more elements, e means enumeration object, right? When you call e dot has more elements, it will check values one by one. If how many elements is available, how many times it will, while loop it will execute, and it will print the each e dot next element. For example, enumeration containing three values, right? A, B, C values. So first it will come to e dot has more elements. It will inside go to this method, and it will e dot next element. First it will give the dance, next it will give the fight, and next it will give the Bangalore. After that again it will come to this line number 34. A for context, you are, I am putting into the set attribute, right? Context or set attribute, I'm passing key and value. How you are getting these values? Again, context dot get attribute, I'm passing the key. Then you are getting the dance. Okay. How these values are, what values you are getting, I will show you. See here again, A, B, A, B, C. So three values you are printing again equal to context dot attribute names. So from enumeration again you are getting all the attribute names, while has more elements again you are printing the all the elements. Let's see how you are getting the response in the browser. I will show you right now. What happened? Mm, I will do one thing. So here, right? Actually, in the Serlet, I'm using Serlet, sorry, Apache Tomcat 10, right? So the corresponding Serlet 10 server, it is required the corresponding this jar file. Let's second, one second. Java Serlet lib folder, Serlet API. Yeah. Serlet API is so if you use, if you use Serlet Tomcat 10, manually you have to add Serlet API jar file. But if you use 10, 9, no need to add this jar. By default, 9 it will having Serlet API jar. Okay, that is the difference. Okay, now I will run. This time I will run this example. Run as server. Why this is coming? Okay. Yeah. So go to servers, run this one, cancel, remove, double click, ports. Okay. Run context. But you can use Servlet 9, Tomcat 9 only. Okay. Uh, I already explained right how to download Tomcat 9. See now I'm hitting context. Enter. So Control C. What is the URL pattern? Not this one. Hmm. No such method exception. Context. No such method exception where it's giving not found. 7979. It's correct only, right? No context and so .xml context servlet context tab. See here. See logical name context tab name for Ramcharan designation hero. So I will tell you. See here, go to your servlet class. What is the purpose of up to designation? You are clear, right? Now, what is the purpose of this? Where you are printing these two, right? Name designation, right? So this is the values. Here you created enumeration object get init parameter names. How parameters is available? Two parameters is available name and designation. That what are the columns available in the values key values available in this enumeration object, those two it will print here. That is nothing but name and designation. Again next it will print what is your here line number 23, 24, 25. You are putting some values. A means dance, B means fight, C means bangle. How you can put the values key and value into the context object? Set attribute method you have to use. Okay, set attribute. Let's assume here you are added set attribute a b c, and how you are getting context dot get attribute. You are passing the key, you are able to get a for dance, b for fight, c for bangalore. Okay, now again you are printing e dot context dot get attribute names. Now this time you are using here you are using get attribute names containing by default context object having this much attribute names JS scanner TLD. These are all default one, but these two here, this one and these two are the our values. Okay, remaining these things are by default Java context containing this default information. Okay, these lines it will print these entire things. Okay, these three containing these values, and again this while loop containing these two, and again the corresponding out dot println and this designation, these three, and logical name containing the corresponding logical name. This is containing context object example. Okay, now next one I will show you. Yeah, what is the example? Registration app, where it is. Yeah, so just a second. Just a second. I will again I will share my screen. Hello guys, you can take 10 minutes break. Okay, come back at 10:50. Okay, you can come back 10:50. Yeah.